but I
That's
can
right.
hear you.
So
Don't laugh too much. I know that.
the voice is not so bad as the cough that came with it. So
Yeah.
I will try not. I was just laughing at the drowning. But Marcia, I've been following the show, even though I dared not come on out of respect to the audience or for the audience, because I probably would have been interrupting my contributions with, I had whatever bug is going around. I suffer from what's called allergic rhinitis, and Sahara dust and all of these things tend to, but this is the first time I've had a case as bad as this in recent times. But I followed. What I started to say is that I've been following the show all the time, and I hope people do not trivialize the issues that you're putting there. And I'll focus particularly on the issue of trying to erase a legacy. And I say this directly to Mia Motley, Prime Minister of Barbados. Create your own legacy. The destruction of the legacy of Errol Barrow, whatever it is that will drive you to do that, because the evidence is there and more evidence will come. Whatever it is that is driving you to do that is coming from what I will describe in my words as a very sick place. Anybody who does not understand the value of adding to the history of its country or his or her country, especially when they have been given the role that she has been given, and will seek, as I said, rather to subtract rather than add, is sick. You cannot change even if you erase. It may be erased in terms of physical symbols, emblems, but you cannot change history. And for somebody who walks around this world talking about being enlightened, and I talk to my friends across Africa, some of my former colleagues in the international arena, and they want to sing your praises, but at home, you are behaving the way you do. You're a total contradiction. A total contradiction. And you know what I want to talk about, Marcia, in my presentation? I call it deconstruct and pause. She has given us the word
Yes.
deconstruct and reconstruct, but hers is deconstruct and pause, because she has not been able. First of all, I will talk a little bit about what I feel deconstruction should be, because deconstruction does not mean destruction. It means breaking down, not only in literal terms, but in figurative terms, where you analyze. And having broken it down, you analyze to determine, is this good, bad, or indifferent? And do I basically improve, retain, build on, but not destroy? You destroy the things that are evil. We need to destroy crime. We need to address problems. And so your mantra of deconstruct and reconstruct sounds good, as a lot of other things that you have used, because you are the queen of buzzwords, Prime Minister. And I'm not pulling any punches anymore. And I will say, I spent the last week many hours in bed. And when you step away from your daily routine, you get the opportunity, colleagues, to do some introspection, whether it's personal, whether it's professional, whether it is domestic, as in the case of your country, region. Thanks, Sandra. Whether you're looking outside at the region or you're looking globally. And I spent a lot of time thinking about this country, because I'll say this, and I may talk about a whole set of things, but forgive me, because really I'm trying to share with you some of the things that really preoccupied me as I listened to this show, as I commiserated with people who lost loved ones, as we as Barbadians, and me as a senior citizen, come to terms with the fact that this country, or some people in this country, have changed so radically that they have no respect for the elderly. But you know what? I see parallels in these things. And so I want to bring that comment about respect for the elderly, and I would use the African term, the elders. And in the case of the elders, those who have gone on, and bring it back to where I started in relation to talking about the Prime Minister of Barbados, and what to all intents and purposes is becoming more and more evident that she has no respect for the contributions of one elder in particular and all who worked with him. And that elder is the Prime Minister, the first Prime Minister of Barbados, the right excellent Elroy Walton Barrow, founding father of this nation. One of the, somebody that she, and I heard you referred last week, she likes to refer to as Uncle Errol when you want to make these social connections, but you have no respect. Any African would tell you that you respect your elders. My first visit to Africa, now Marcia, I can be all over the place, because I talk for a long time, but I try to make the connection. So if you see me straying, pull me back. My first visit to Africa was a trip to Zambia when I was in my 20s. It was about 40 years ago, more than 40 years, 40 something years ago. And one of the things that the family with whom I stayed liked me was that as this foreigner coming into their culture, I quickly recognized the way you paid respect to your elders. In Barbados, as a 20-something-year-old, you would not have seen me kind of bow to an older person. But that's how they respected their elders. And I did it. Now, coming back to the Prime Minister, you took what I understand to be soil from, I presume, Newton Burial Ground or somewhere else. And one of these days, Marcia, I will share where that idea probably came from, but I do not digress now. You took that in some ritual, and I'm not going to, Marcia's been talking a lot. You had some ceremony where you took that back. And the question is, why were you doing that? On the surface, what you were hearing is that this was part of your tribute to our elders, our African ancestors who were brought across the Atlantic Ocean from the motherland, a place that I revere and that I seriously contemplated moving to Marcia recently, because this place is stressing people out. And you took that back there out of so-called reverence, because you are looking at the origins of the people of this country. But you want to destroy the man's legacy who is the founding father of this nation? Isn't that a significant contradiction? And I say to the Prime Minister of Barbados, stick a pin and look at what you are doing to this country. Because you are running around the world saying and doing some things that sound good, that those looking on will say look good. And you did say to us Barbadians, vote for my watchman. But we watching. I am watching. All Barbadians are watching. Those who, for partisan purposes, see that you do no wrong, they may be watching and they may be liking what you're doing. But you know, talk to some of the young people of this country and we will understand how these contradictions are confusing our young people. Because I believe that in all that is being said and done, it is becoming clearer and clearer that we have an unfortunate situation where our leader and leaders, because she is not she's not running this country by herself, seem to be saying, we will only look good if we destroy, we ignore, we reject, we seek to erase all that went before. And on that note, Marcia, I think I might have used it more than half my time, but I want to get to that set title I have here, Deconstruct and Pause. The Prime Minister did promise to deconstruct, and she promised to reconstruct. And in the case of things at the level of our nation, our flag, and it's interesting that you make reference to pledging allegiance to our flag. And I will tell you something, that little flag on your left breast, when you leave the shores of your country, says something. I have visited, Marcia. One of these nights I will list them for you. It'll probably take up a few minutes. I have been to Africa, Asia, Europe, North and South America, Central America, the Caribbean, Oceania. I've been to Australia. I've been to Sri Lanka. I've been all, in terms of those places. I've been far and wide. And one of the things that you see everywhere you go, you sit to negotiate, and if they have them available, they will show your flag and their flag.
Because let's clarify for people that we have with us a former Minister of Foreign Affairs who, when I spoke with, and I'm allowed to say it, I did ask the Honorable Prime Minister Frondel Stewart. I can say that I spoke with him about how many times did he go to the UN, and he said, Marcia, very few, because my Minister of Foreign Affairs, the Honorable Maxine McClean, Senator Maxine McClean, would have been the person who, would represent Barbados at the UN. And she would have worn the flag. Would you have worn the flag, Miss McClean?
Yeah, you actually had a picture of me addressing the General Assembly.
I know, but I'm just asking you to let them hear.
Yeah, you wear the flag, and it is a standard. It is a standard practice. In fact, tonight I was smiling because I remember once somebody asked me if they could have my flag, and I said to them, "Sorry, I will have to get one for you because this is the only one I have on me." And if I give it to you, I won't be wearing any flag, And it's a tradition, but remember, in our pledge, we pledge allegiance to the country and to our flag.
Yes.
To hold and defend their honor, and by your living to do whatever. So my point is, it is an honor to wear it. It is a tradition that you see if you check pictures of former presidents of the United States, prime ministers of various countries, etc., presidents around the world, they wear those things. So it is passing strange that we do not ever see the Prime Minister of Barbados wearing hers. And it is strange, and it may seem a little thing, but the point is, whenever you go somewhere, if the people do not recognize the flag, they ask you, what country are you representing? Because they see that you're wearing the flag of a country. So I think, Marcia, that what really and truly, as I was saying, when we look at all of this, that perhaps the promise to deconstruct and reconstruct are probably part of a much bigger picture than some people understand it to be. Typically, what we were anticipating was that it was used in reference. You heard ministers repeat it over and over again, that this was part of their undertaking to use a certain approach to their work. But if I am to look, and I want to look at it, because notice the title I used, Deconstruct and Pause, because I have been analyzing the various sectors of this economy and looking at those sectors within the context of an evaluation of the work of the ministries which form part of a particular sector. We are talking about education. And if I use education tonight, and David asked if I had anything that I might wanted played, and there's a clip, Marcia, if I would like to have it played quickly, because it's going to form the basis of a conversation, which I will start because you will tell me how long I have to go, but it will form part of a conversation, a continuing conversation that I want to have with Barbadians. And I've chosen this because we have heard a lot about government educational reform. I don't use the expression at the bottom. It is there for others, and we will. It stays there, but I don't use it because for me to use it is almost to accept that such a thing. But that's a term that they use. And if you listen, well, they haven't put clear proposals, but I want people to listen to this because one of the things that this government said they were going to deconstruct was the transition, the common entrance, which is really the transition from primary to secondary school. So, Dave, if you can play, I would then speak to it to illustrate some of my concerns about what seems to be a failure to properly deconstruct, or even to and certainly there's no construction of anything or constructive activity.
The common entrance exam, as we call it, is the culmination of a series of standardized diagnostic tests which begin in the nursery, at the nursery level. At that level, the infant level, there is a test. It is called Basic Skills Assessment, standardized across the system. And in that, remember, we're talking at the very early stages, not quite nursery, but very early stages. The test at that level is broken down into a variety of skills, competencies that you would expect a 6-year-old to master. Color identification, vocabulary, auditory memory, spatial relationships, alphabet knowledge, picture comprehension, and so on and so forth. The beauty about this is that when these children are tested at that level, remember the test would have to be very scientifically prepared by the CXC. It is possible, and what the education ministry can do is to give each school and each parent a report on their child, which would do a comparison with other children in the school, or do a comparison with what children in the country are doing. What are the weaknesses? They can identify for each child. When I taught at Robert Boys School, this was something like this was the, I sat a test and I corrected it. It bore no relation to what the children in the next class were doing, far less the children in the school, far less the children in the nation. And no report of that nature went on to. So then, at the next level, there is the criterion reference test as the children go on. Class 1, a similar diagnostic exam, mathematics and language arts. Later on, they're taking science and social studies. But at that stage, and again, a report goes home to the parent, a report comes to the school for those children at age 6, identifying their areas of strengths and the areas of weakness. Remember, I'm saying this is part of a continuum leading up to. There's a diagnostic process leading up to this thing called the Common Entrance Exam, which, remember, is designed by the Caribbean Examinations Council, whose registrar is a Bajan from the Women St. Peter.
Okay, I think
the Ministry of Education is in a position to post every parent. Once upon a time, the schools used to distribute the results of these standardized tests. The Ministry of Education now sends to each parent a report on the performance, the strengths and the weaknesses. Each school has such a report. Remember I said it's diagnostic. CXC and the ministry organizes area meetings for the principals, where they go through in detail the performance of the students. Who is weak in what area? What areas do we need to emphasize? I have here one of these criterion reference tests, a report.
Okay, thanks very much. And Marcia and members of the loyal opposition, I took time to play that because a couple of things should jump out at you and certainly jumped out at me. We talk about the common entrance exam as something that is, for some people, that is seen as highly problematic because we feel that it is unfair to some students, etc. But what I think is very critical is to ask yourself, when we are looking to deconstruct something, we have to break it down and understand. I suspect that for many people, this is the first time that they have heard an explanation of the process of trying to evaluate early childhood performance, students during the early childhood period, from nursery, let's say from 4 to 10, before they get to the common entrance exam, in terms of a series of diagnostic tests. The first question that I would ask, when is that, first of all, let's look at the current, is that exercise or those exercises, are they still taking place? Our students, are the children in our primary and nursery and primary schools still being given these diagnostic tests? One. Secondly, if these tests are being administered, what happens with the information generated? Remember that these tests are intended to identify weaknesses, strengths, need for remedial work, etc., allowing teachers and parents to understand where their children are in terms of the expected areas of academic development and related areas of development as a child. So the first question I asked to the Ministry of Education, are they doing these? Secondly, if they're doing them, what are they doing with the information? And I say to parents, do you have any idea what your child's situation is in relation to these? In other words, do you see those test results? Do you discuss them with teachers? Do you even discuss them with your child? Do you understand what you're looking at and all of that? Because to my mind, when you contextualize that exam and these things, a number of issues are brought to the fore, and it tells us that if the work that is being done, the information that is being generated by these tests in terms of the information on each student, the kind of work and support that is needed can be done. And so rather than throw out something and say we're going for something that is not even properly articulated, so you're deconstructing something, or you're setting it aside, or whatever the case may be, when in fact you may have an excellent system which needs properly utilizing or maybe modifying, etc. And this, I think, is a fundamental problem. And I see parallels in what you were talking about earlier when you talked about the need to get rid of emblems and all kinds of things, you know, because at the end of the day, nothing, you know, government is let me put it this way, and when it suits politicians and other people, they will tell you government is a continuum. But when it suits them, it is as though we want to wipe the slate clean. And the problem that I am seeing, Marcia, is that in trying to do that, We are destroying things that we have invested in, things that we shouldn't be seeing the returns on those investments. We are seeing bad decisions being taken, good work going to waste. And I could go on to look. I've used the common entrance exam. Part of this exercise throws up students who need remedial work. Part of this exercise also probably highlights the reasons why, or at least it points decision makers, policy makers, and parents in the direction of looking to see what's happening with their children in a way that they are able to do remedial work. We had an initiative created, I'm trying to remember the name, it was something Academy. It was located at Erdeston. When the school that was there was closed, was physically moved and so on. And it was intended to address the needs of children with behavioral problems from primary and secondary school. And I've spoken about it here previously, but I can talk about it again. And a lot of effort was made to get that system working, utilizing existing resources, because back in between 2008 and 18, money was tight. We all know that. But this program was put in place. Teachers who were trained were pulled from various places to work in that. They were exposed to, programs elsewhere, etc. And then the program get parked. And we come back with something and behave as if we never had it, which was a waste of resources. So Marcia, as I listened to you, and as I sat down, as I said, over the last several days, and I observed everything that is happening, I recognize that we cannot continue as a country to allow the kind of wastage that we are seeing in the name of, somebody put it there, of legacy building.
Mm-hmm.
In a negative way. Legacy building, and I said before, it's supposed to be additive. It's not supposed to subtract. It's not supposed to take away from. But what we're doing, we're looking to cancel, to cancel out what existed. You may do that in your mind, and you may do that in the minds of those who you refuse to educate about the truth. But in the contradictions that keep flowing, because we're gonna try to eliminate all the error Barrow did as Prime Minister of this country, as founder of the nation, and so on. But yet we're gonna want to push Sir Grantley Adams, or we will go back and we will talk about Buster or Kafi, as you say, who we never saw.
Mm-hmm.
Somebody had to imagine, and I am not saying that we shouldn't have Buster, but somebody had to imagine what he might look like. But I will say to Barbadians, even though, and this is, I think, I will pause you. You can respond to what you've heard me say.
Yes, and I see Mr. Murray is there.
And if for those,
one more minute, yeah.
So for those who will say that we know that our founding father, he was cremated, I was pleasantly, because I didn't remember this, I was pleasantly surprised once when I took some friends who were visiting Barbados. We went to the military cemetery. And I will say that some of the ashes of the Right Excellent Errol Walton Barrow are interred in the military cemetery at Gravesend.
Mm.
So they can go and dig at that.